Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and we return to 1981 for the second storyline in the Star Wars newspaper strips once Al Williamson and Archie Goodwin took over the title. I'm your host as always, Nathan P. Butler. The story we're looking at this time is entitled Darth Vader Strikes. It was released from April 20th through July 26th of 1981. And it's another of these that has sort of a recycled element to it, or at least it has a recycled feel to it at this point. Not because it's an element from the films that gets recycled by retellings over and over, like the whole Bounty Hunter of Ord Mantell thing with the previous storyline that's been retold since then. This is one that's more of an issue where there's a theme going on that's been repeated in recent years through things like the betrayal storyline of Star Wars Empire, but even back then was being repeated in the Marvel series at the same time. Our next episode of From the Star Wars Library is going to be about the storyline Resurrection of Evil and to Take the Tarkin from the Marvel series, in which some Imperial officers decide they want to turn the tables and take down Vader for reasons all their own, about their own power, their own safety, the good of the Empire, and all of that. Well, this same kind of storyline is happening in Darth Vader Strikes. It's Imperial officers working against Vader, albeit done with a little more panache than what we saw in the Marvel series, or what we will see in our next episode here that was going on at the same time in the Marvel series. Now, hardcore collectors will find this on pages 48 through 90 of Volume 1 of that Russ Cochran set of the newspaper strip reprintings from 1991. But most readers are more likely to be reading this in the pages of Classic Star Wars. Those of you who are reading this in Classic Star Wars will find that issue number 2 starts this story about midway through on page 15. It's a second panel of that particular page, and this goes on through also issue number 3, that I almost dropped there, and issue number 4, but again, not entirely through issue number 4. Instead, this only takes us up to this panel right here at the top of page 11, and then it moves on into the next story called The Serpent Masters. Again, they're not trying to divide up the issues based on the storylines, they're just going with however much they can fit in a given issue of this 20-issue series. At one point, and I believe the letters page of the first or second issue, they said that they thought it was only going to be about 15 issues or so. It turned out to be more than they expected from that particular series. The story here essentially is that there are these Imperial officers who want to bring down Darth Vader, and they're working together sort of behind the scenes to find a way to bring him down while he's working on, of all things, the project that is building at the Fondor shipyards the Executor, the first super star destroyer that we have ever seen. We see it, of course, in The Empire Strikes Back. This is set shortly before then, though when has been something that's been debated over the years here. And it's actually something I actually thought was kind of cool, because in seeing this and seeing it under construction in Classic Star Wars, that kind of connects it into The Force Unleashed, the first game in which you take off from the Executor, which is where Vader was, at least for a while, apparently training Galen Marek, aka Starkiller. In any event, they're working against him while they're at this project, and Vader has faked, along with Admiral Griff, that he is displeased with Admiral Griff. This lets Griff appear to be on the outs with Vader so he can get in with those officers and essentially set them up to be wiped out. Along with this, he, as part of this plan, plots to send out information to the Rebel Alliance that basically says, hey, Vader's working on this new project, the Executor, how would you like to bring it down? We're displeased with him, work with us. So that gives him a way of making sure the Imperial officers who are plotting against Vader are flat out conspiring with the Rebel Alliance, so it's obvious they really are traitors. There can be no question about it. But that also means that it puts the Rebel Alliance in harm's way. And at this point, Han and Leia have been getting closer and closer. Luke is jealous of it, not realizing it's his sister, and because he thinks that Han being hot-headed and action-heavy is what Leia likes, he takes off and goes on this mission with R2-D2 and C-3PO to try to prove that he's a man of action as well. He winds up arriving, meets Tanith Shire, this woman who is, at least at first, it looks like she's just kind of a pilot, you know, hauling stuff around and such for this project. Turns out she's more of a ship thief, but we'll find that out as we move into the second storyline to feature Tanith, the third overall here in this particular run of the newspaper strip series. We'll see that in a future episode called The Serpent Masters. Suffice to say, he's lured into this trap, of course. He's working with Griff, but when they meet, you know, the final confrontation, what's supposed to be the final confrontation, where the Imperial Admirals plus Griff, who's setting them up, plus Luke is all there, supposedly getting ready to bring down Vader, Vader springs his trap. Only Luke was sort of the wild card. He didn't realize that the person who would be with them, the rebel spy, would be Force sensitive. So Luke senses that Vader is coming, and Vader's kind of shocked by this, of course. Luke senses Vader is coming and winds up getting the droids to start, or winds up with Tanith Shire's help, getting some smoke going and such. He hides by knocking out a stormtrooper and putting on the stormtrooper armor like he did in A New Hope, and kind of slips on out of there. So he escapes their grasp, although most of the conspirators themselves are caught. The plan sort of worked, but Vader is now frustrated because he saw now that there is a better, bigger target that could have been captured who's managed to get away. Unfortunately, they have to stow away on one of these drone barges that Tanith Shire has been hijacking. She's been reprogramming them and sending them to the Serpent Masters, as we'll find in the next storyline. But they're stuck on this barge as they escape, not realizing that they are running out of air, as we'll see in the next tale. So, I mean, these are very continuous stories for the most part. Not really as seamless a connection between the bounty hunter of Ord Mantell and Darth Vader Strikes, because we see Vader out there pursuing the Millennium Falcon in his TIE Advanced, and we think, holy crap, it's a continuation of the escape in the last story, but it's not. He's going after essentially a drone version for practice. So it's a little bit jarring in that case, but this one goes straight into the Serpent Masters with very little leeway in between, basically just kind of shooting straight through, a couple of extra added and tweaked panels, make it run very smoothly in the pages of classic Star Wars. Not quite as smooth in the newspaper strips, but that's kind of what you would expect when it's a daily newspaper strip. The question, of course, though, is this an essential read? And frankly, it's not. Although, I do find it kind of interesting that this story is one of several from the newspaper strips to wind up showing up in the pages of A New Hope, The Life of Luke Skywalker by Ryder Wyndham. It's this kind of glossy book where inside it's one of those Star Wars biographies by Ryder Wyndham. Not only does this storyline appear in A New Hope, The Life of Luke Skywalker, you also get, among others, the Crucible issue, that standalone kind of fill-in issue back from the Marvel series. You get the Night Beast, the Return of Ben Kenobi, Ice World, and the Paradise Detour, also from this, plus other issues of the Marvel series, The Empire Strikes, in Mortal Kombat. You get some out of Rebel Force, you get things like Splendor of the Mind's Eye, lots and lots of cool stuff from the early stuff being reworked by Ryder Wyndham into this book in which Luke is sort of recounting some of his Rebellion-era exploits, which is pretty cool. It's one of the nifty parts of recent Star Wars publishing that a lot of people don't realize is out there, because it's by Scholastic, not Del Rey. Doesn't get nearly as much hype as the Del Rey novels tend to. So Darth Vader Strikes. It is not an essential read, but it is kind of cool that it does introduce Tanith Shire, and she will be a player throughout the newspaper strips through much of the rest, though not all of the rest, of the Goodwin-Williamson run. Check it out in the pages of classic Star Wars, but if you miss it, not a big deal. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.